Good morning and welcome to an important policy panel discussion here at the Global Plastics Summit between two national leaders in the United States Senate. My name is Matt Seaholm. I'm the Vice President of Government Affairs at the Plastics Industry Association, and I'll be moderating today's conversation about the important issue of marine debris and ocean plastics here in the Environment and Public Works Committee hearing room on Capitol Hill. Our team at the Plastics Industry Association represents the entire supply chain and works to promote the incredible amount of work being done by our members and their workers, especially during a time of COVID-19. At all levels of government, it's often hard to find consensus and bipartisanship. But one thing that we can all agree on is the need to keep plastic from getting into our environment. The shared commitment to sustainability and the authorship of the Save Our Seas 2.0 legislation is what brings our two guests to join us here today. That's why it's my honor to introduce to you today our two guests, two United States senators who have led on this important issue. First, Senator Dan Sullivan. Senator Sullivan was sworn in as Alaska's 8th U.S. Senator on January 6, 2015. He serves on 4 Senate committees vital to Alaska: the Armed Services Committee, where he is chairman of the Subcommittee on Readiness, the Environment and Public Works Committee, the Veterans Affairs Committee, and the Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee, where he is chairman of the Subcommittee on Oceans, Atmosphere, Fisheries, and Coast Guard. Since coming to the Senate, Sullivan has been a leader on environmental stewardship, particularly regarding the challenge of cleaning up the oceans amid global marine debris. Together with Senator Whitehouse from Rhode Island, Senator Sullivan authored the Save Our Seas Act, signed into law in 2018 to help reduce plastic waste and spur innovation into new ocean-friendly technologies. Building on this legislative victory, Sullivan subsequently introduced the Save Our Seas 2.0 Act, the most comprehensive marine debris bill to ever pass the Senate, which awaits consideration in the House. Prior to his election in the U.S. Senate, Senator Sullivan served as Alaska's Attorney General and Commissioner of the Alaska Department of Natural Resources, where he focused on pushing back on federal government overreach and growing Alaska's economy. Senator Sullivan served in the George W. Bush administration as the U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Economic, Energy, and Business under Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, and as a director in the International Economics Directorate of the National Security Council staff at the White House. He is currently an infantry officer in the United States Marine Corps Reserve, where he was recently promoted to colonel. He is also the chairman of the International Republican Institute, a national endowment for democracy organization that promotes free and fair elections worldwide. Senator Sullivan holds a BA in economics from Harvard University and a joint law and Master of Science degree in foreign service from Georgetown University. He and his wife, Julie Fate Sullivan, were married 25 years ago in Julie's hometown of Fairbanks, Alaska. They have 3 daughters, Megan, Isabella, and Laurel. Next, we have United States Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. Senator Whitehouse, a member of the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee, plays a key role in crafting policies addressing environmental protection and climate change. In 2011, he joined with Democrats and Republicans to form the Senate Oceans Caucus to increase awareness of and find common ground on issues facing the oceans and coasts. The caucus helped gain Senate approval of 4 international fisheries treaties and passage of the IUU Fishing Enforcement Act that will prevent illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. Whitehouse has worked to boost federal support for fisheries science and cooperative fisheries research, as well as efforts to improve transparency and efficiency in the commercial and recreational fisheries management process. Senator Whitehouse has long advocated for a dedicated fund to support ocean and coastal research, restoration, and conservation. In 2015, the National Oceans and Coastal Security Fund, now the National Coastal Resilience Fund, was created to provide grants that support work for the oceans, coasts, and Great Lakes. It received funding for the first time as part of the fiscal year 2018 spending bill. He also led the successful bipartisan effort to reauthorize the Environmental Protection Agency's National Estuaries Program to protect and study coastal habitats. Whitehouse has led bipartisan efforts to address the growing threat of marine plastic and other marine debris. Together with Senator Sullivan from Alaska, he authored the Save Our Seas Act, a bipartisan law to reauthorize the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's Marine Debris Program and to strengthen America's role in combating global marine debris. Whitehouse's and Sullivan's second ambitious bill to clean up the oceans, the bipartisan Save Our Seas 2.0 Act, has passed the Senate. Senator Sullivan is a graduate of Yale University and the University of Virginia School of Law. He served as United States Attorney and Attorney General of Rhode Island before being elected to the Senate in 2006. In addition to the Environment and Public Works Committee, he's a member of the Budget Committee, the Judiciary Committee, and the Finance Committee. He and his wife, Sandra, a marine biologist and environmental advocate, live in Newport. They have 2 children. Well, Senators, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it. We know your time's valuable, so we're just going to dive right in. Senator Sullivan, first, just going to ask you, what got you interested in the issue of marine debris, plastic pollution in the oceans?
Well, look, it's a really big issue for Alaska, having more coastline than the rest of the lower 48 combined. And it's important for our environment, it's important for our economy, it's important for our tourism sector. But it's also the right thing to do. And when I got here, actually in this very room, the Environment and Public Works Committee hearing room, my good friend Sheldon Whitehouse and I started collaborating. But I'll tell you, I think it was Senator Whitehouse's leadership that certainly kind of got me very interested on all we could do. We held a hearing in this room early on in my tenure in the U.S. Senate, working closely together as a chairman and ranking member of a subcommittee on these issues, and then we were off to the races. Saw a really good opportunity to address an issue that matters to Alaska, to Rhode Island, to America, and really to the world. And we haven't stopped. So that was kind of the origins.
Right. Well, Senator Whitehouse, similar question to you. Obviously, coming from the ocean state, probably goes without saying, but yeah. How did this become a priority for you?
Well, I've spent a good deal of my life in, on, and around the oceans, and I see the oceans as just an extraordinary global resource that we have been very cruel to, very unkind to, living in a false dream that we can do unlimited damage to the oceans and they will always recover. They'll always take care of themselves. And I think we found that that's not the case any longer, that we can't just be takers from the ocean. We have to be caretakers. And the ocean plastic problem was really becoming acute. Reports were coming out that on our present course, we were headed for an ocean with more waste plastic in it by mass than living fish in it. That's nothing I want to leave to my kids or grandkids. That's nothing Dan wants to leave to his kids or grandkids. And so we, as Dan said, we forged this good partnership. And Dan was incredibly important to it in kind of a weird small Senate way, which is that this issue hits a turf intersection between EPW, where we're sitting right now, the Environment Public Works Committee, and the Commerce Committee. And by happy coincidence, the chairman of the relevant subcommittee in EPW and the chairman of the relevant subcommittee in Commerce were the same person, Dan Sullivan. So we were able to blow through that turf issue and get to substantive work.
We had a good discussion with myself on the turf issue. We decided
negotiated it out.
It was okay.
It's a great way to build consensus.
That's right. No turf issues from the chairman. Right?
Well, that kind of naturally goes into the next question. I mean, at a time where finding bipartisanship is oftentimes difficult, a large geographic difference between the two of you, but I mean, at some point you had that initial conversation. How did it go, and how did the conversations really develop from there that said, we need to work together on this issue?
Well, the opening issue was, could we have a hearing? Could we do it in Dan's subcommittee? And how do we deal with the Commerce Committee? And when that came together, the hearing that we had in this committee was really stunning, because this is usually the pit for partisan warfare on environmental issues. But on this issue, every single member who came had something good to say and offered to be productive and to help. So it was kind of a breakthrough moment when we had the response both from the witnesses and across the breadth of this committee, all so supportive. And that, I think, was what, to me, was the signal, is we can really do this. We can really have a breakthrough here.
So that was on our first bill, Save Our Seas Act, that was passed in last Congress. And
unanimously.
Yeah, and then we got it over the House, and we got the President signing an Oval Office signing ceremony, which It's a great story. Senator Whitehouse and President Trump got along just swimmingly at in that meeting, and he committed to work with us even more, and President and his team are committed on this too. So I think the kind of lesson here, as we were starting it here in EPW, then we brought over the Commerce Committee because it had some dual jurisdiction, is that the more we talked about it to different groups, whether it was the executive branch, our fellow senators, then we started work in the House, the more people actually not only were supportive but got excited because it's an issue that brings people together. It's an environmental problem that we could solve, and who doesn't want to clean up our oceans, right? And so we just got to work on getting that one passed. Pressing the agencies, right? We've been pressing everybody from state to USTR to the White House, USAID, and kind of, again, Senator Whitehouse and I tag team in this the whole time. So it's really gotten a lot of momentum.
One thing I've learned is that if you're an executive branch official, you really don't want to have Dan Sullivan on the phone with you if you're not doing what he wants. He's been an extremely powerful ally in dealing with this administration.
Well, I think if you see the new USMCA, the new NAFTA, right, there's a section in there on ocean debris. I think it's the first time a free trade agreement by the United States has that. We pressed the U.S. trade rep. We had a good meeting actually in Senator Whitehouse's office with the U.S. trade rep, and again, so we've been pressing this issue with everybody, literally everybody in the federal government.
And when Dan puts on his Marine hat to press an issue, he's a force to be reckoned with.
We've made progress.
Well, that kind of leads us to, as of today, you guys sent it flying through the Save Our Seas 2.0 went flying through the Senate.
Yep.
It's obviously a lot of things have gone on this year that derail legislation. But at this point, what are you feeling about Save Our Seas 2.0? Can it get passed before the end of the 116th Congress at the end of this year? I guess, can we see success?
So I would say yes. I hope so. And this is another area where Sheldon and I have been working really closely together because we obviously have different allies, different kind of political cohorts. But Save Our Seas 2.0, now that was a lot more ambitious. The Congressional Research Service called that the most comprehensive ocean cleanup legislation ever to come out of the Senate. It was unanimous. Again, we worked it hard. It was not
easy.
Simple. It went through 3 different committees, big committees, Commerce, EPW, and because it's got a big foreign relations component, the Foreign Relations Committee. Senator Menendez played a really important part as the ranking member on foreign relations. A lot of negotiations with both of our Democrat and Republican colleagues, but we got that done in January. And we're really on the verge here in the House. As a matter of fact, I had good discussions with some of our Democrat House colleagues and Republican House colleagues just in the last couple days, so I'm hopeful.
Well, good. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
I want to ask you about one part of the Save Our Seas 2.0, and it goes much broader than that, and that's recycling infrastructure. One of the things that I think everybody can agree with is we need to modernize, we need to improve the recycling infrastructure in the country, and one of the targets of Save Our Seas 2.0 is about keeping plastic waste from ending up in the ocean, and one of those is recovery and recycling. So I'm interested to hear both of your perspectives on the part that recycling plays in ultimately solving the issue that we face.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we need to do is have some very good, strong hearings on recycling to figure out what is going on. My take on it is that a lot of the recycling that is claimed to take place was actually phony. That stuff went into the blue recycling bin, but then it ended up going across the ocean to an Asian country to be dumped, and very likely ended up being washed into a river and from there into the sea. So what was supposed to be being recycled actually ended up in the ocean. And I think we need to have a bit of a reckoning on what the recycling system looks like, how it really works, how Americans can count when they put something in the recycling bin to have it actually end up recycled. And I think that's a one of the important things that we need to clean up and get right, because recycling is going to be an important component of the solution.
And the other two elements of Save Our Seas 2.0 is not just kind of the domestic recycling infrastructure, and I agree fully with Sheldon about, getting to the bottom of what's really happening and holding hearings in that regard. But there's also an innovation aspect, a marine debris foundation, which is a really important statement from the Congress that this is an important issue where we can take in, non-government monies to help with regard to innovation and an international component, because we can always improve with regard to how we're dealing with these issues, we, the United States, but a lot of the challenges are overseas. A lot of the challenges are overseas, and a lot of the marine debris and plastics that end up either on the shores of Alaska or Rhode Island or anywhere else in America, a lot of them come from Asia. The majority come from Asia.
On a slightly separate track, a recent time when we were sitting like this side by side was in the Appropriations Committee, testifying in favor of an international oceans plastic fund. And we gained, right at that hearing, commitments from the Republican chairman and the Democratic ranking member that they were going to do a big ocean plastics fund. And we're working through the details of that right now. But that was a good commitment to get. And again, it's that focus on where most of this plastic waste in the oceans is coming from, which is overseas.
And, importantly, and it's in our bill, the 2.0 bill, trying to establish American leadership on this too, which is an important element of what we're trying to do as well.
Yeah, that was one of my questions, because I think it is important to discuss is obviously oceans don't have borders. We all share the same ocean. So, there has to be some leadership, and I think, your bill is a good example of how we can show that. One of the things included in it is talking about the inclusion of marine debris as part of negotiations with other countries. So I'm interested to kind of elaborate on the international component of this. Is how do we take the next step? How do we make this an issue that says, okay, listen, we understand that a lot of this plastic is coming from other places, and we can't control that by ourselves. How do we get them? How do we get other countries, I guess, to kind of understand how important this is?
You got to remember that we started pretty much at zero. When we first did the SOS bill, there was no ocean plastic legislation in the Senate. There hadn't been. And it was a minor or non-existent factor in trade and diplomatic negotiations. Since then, the bipartisanship of the original SOS bill and Dan's persistent efforts with the administration have taken it from zero to something. And with 2.0 going forward, I think we're starting to see increased interest and more industry interest. So it's kind of coming together. But I would say SOS was the beachhead bill. SOS 2.0 sort of consolidated our gains and gave us some stronger purpose. And we're going to continue to push forward, irrespective of the November election. Whoever wins, we're going to be together hounding the administration to make this a bigger priority. I think it's been a little bit slow to filter down from the President, the Trade Representative, and the Secretary of State, who've all said good things, down to the operatives who actually do the negotiations. And I'm tired of seeing us called out in news stories as the worst of the countries involved in these negotiations. But I think, again, that's the sign of the progress that's happening. It hasn't gone all the way through yet, but it's progress.
And you can put it in legislation, which we've done that, but you can also, just do the advocacy on your own, and that's what we've been doing. And then the other element, Senator Whitehouse and I have been meeting with senior officials from other countries who know that we care about this issue, know the Senate is engaged on these issues, and particularly some of the countries where the plastics problem is so significant in Asia. And we've been pressing them as well, some of our European allies. So it's kind of legislation, work in the bureaucracies and the federal agencies just on our own, and then work in the international angle, the degree to which, the Senate often meets with foreign leaders when they're in town, or when we're traveling. We've traveled overseas together. So there's all kinds of components that we can continue to press on.
I'm a superstitious guy, so I never like to, pack up the bags in the seventh inning, assuming you're going to win. But if Save Our Seas 2.0 goes through this year, I guess even if it doesn't, it's still the same question. What's next? What does next year look like? What are some additional steps to take? What can we do to continue to move the ball forward?
Well, we're already plotting that.
Yeah.
We're already having staff conversations about what SOS 3.0 is going to look like. I think it's important to first hammer down getting 2.0 passed and hammer down the appropriations fund that we've been promised. And then I think there's an enormous set of opportunities out there to continue and to expand the progress we've made.
And here's what I would say is kind of the key from my perspective of how we've been working on this is, first you need a bipartisan effort, right? And you can see it's a sincere bipartisan effort. It's kind of moved into good friends, right? I consider Sheldon one of my closest friends in the Senate, and I think that's important too. You move forward in a way, not just politically, but personal relationships matter, particularly in this body. But it's also the stakeholders that we've engaged, and I think that's another key here. It's Democrats and Republicans in the legislative branch. It's the executive branch from the president on down really working this. It's industry. The Alliance to End Plastic Waste we were at the kind of inaugural press conference when that was announced. That's a serious effort by a lot of the top companies to put serious money, $1.5 billion, into this problem. And then some of the key conservation and environmental groups who are all also on board. When you have that kind of stakeholder alignment from very disparate groups, politically or in different areas of the country, that's when you can start seeing things move. So to me, keeping that alignment of the key stakeholders is going to be critical to ongoing success.
One of the fun parts of Save Our Seas 2.0 is the Genius Prize. Aptly named for innovation, trying to come up with different ways. Interested to hear your perspective on the role of the cleanup side of things, or at least the collection of material before it goes in, that you think the private sector needs to step up and the part that they need to play in this.
Well, there are big innovation opportunities in this space.
Huge.
Recycling, biodegradable plastic replacements, means of pulling plastic out of the rivers through which most of it comes to the oceans. The problem so far has been when it's free to pollute, you get pollution. And trying to figure out how you can make it a revenue proposition to protect the oceans and to draw plastic back out of the oceans, I think that's just a great space for innovation to take place in.
So, and I would add to that, we're a capitalist society, economy. If some company can innovate in a way that's going to help clean up the oceans and, their company can make a profit from it, then from my perspective, that's great. And so the one example that, I know a lot of companies are looking at is this issue of biodegradability, right? I mean, if you have the ability, and I'm told that at some point it's going to happen. Unfortunately, you have a lot of places that need freshwater plastic bottles. They often find themselves in the ocean and they don't fully biodegrade. And these microplastics, we're looking at studies where that's getting into the seafood chain, and that's such an important area in my state in particular in terms of having a sustainable, healthy fisheries, which we do in Alaska. But if you have an innovation that you could have a fully biodegradable type of plastic, that could be a real game changer here on this problem. And so we're trying to encourage that kind of private sector innovation that, in many ways, the government can do a lot of things, but on innovation, which is so often the key to solving so many problems, environmental, economic, it's the private sector that's got to be driving it. And so, to me, there's enormous opportunities to help clean up the oceans, and if companies can profit from that as well, then I think that's fine.
And of course, our universities, laboratories, NGOs, which are very often the crucibles of innovation.
Another part of Save Our Seas 2.0 is the fishing industry and the role that they can play. Obviously, their livelihoods, their lives are oftentimes spent on the oceans. Why don't you talk a little bit about what's in the bill as it relates to the role that the fishing industry in your respective states off your coasts play to help clean up plastic pollution?
Well, ghost gear is a double problem. First of all, it's plastic pollution out in the ocean. But worse than that, even when it's lost its contact with the fishing craft, it's still out there fishing. And the fish that are caught in the nets and on the hooks just die in those nets and on those hooks because the ghost gear is still out there fishing. So it does a huge pollution harm to the ocean, and it does a huge wasteful fisheries harm to the ocean. But if you're a fisherman and you're going by and you see ghost gear, there's no revenue proposition for you in stopping to pick that up and deal with it. There may be liability issues, you're losing fishing time, so that would be a great area for us to begin to pursue as we continue on to 3.0, because I think there are big opportunities there. 2.0 will start that process, but I think there's more to do.
And you know, in my state, and I like to refer to Alaska as the superpower of seafood, just because over 60% of all the seafood harvested in America, 60, comes from Alaska. And so our fishermen, our coastal communities want clean oceans, want sustainable oceans. That's the key to their livelihood. And so we've had great support from our fishing community, coastal communities on this legislation. And as Sheldon mentioned, you know, we're going to be working with them on 3.0 to get their input and ideas, because as you mentioned, Matt, they're the ones on the oceans, living on the oceans, needing a clean, sustainable ocean and livelihood all the time. So a lot of good ideas there.
You've kind of both alluded to it a few times. One thing that, you know, kudos is certainly warranted here is you've been able to bring the industry and environmental NGOs together to support a piece of legislation. That's not the easiest thing to do. How do you keep that momentum going? How do you continue to not just, I guess, force, but encourage from both sides to continue to work in the same direction?
Well, I'll give you my quick thought on that. And what we've been doing from the start on this is proactively reaching out to different groups, as you mentioned, including federal agencies, and saying, what are your ideas? What do you want? What do you see as a way that this can be effective and important? And we do not want this to, from the beginning, we weren't trying to like target someone as good or target someone as bad. Our whole kind of mindset here was collaboration, get the best ideas from as many different groups as possible, and then bring people together. I think that's the way you get legislation moving, and that's how you get different groups interested. That's how you get the federal agencies to say, hey, we're supportive, we're not against it. You know, the EPA administrator right now has made ocean cleanup and plastics one of his top priorities. He's testified in this hearing room a lot, and we reached out to them early on saying, all right, what do you guys think? So to me, we got to continue to do that, reach out and seek ideas from other folks, and then when we think they're good and positive and constructive, bring them into the legislation.
Willing partners, steady pressure, and no surprises. That's kind of the rule.
Yeah, I like that.
Very good. Well, I'll tell you what, I guess kind of one last question that each of you can answer is, you know, this is being watched by hundreds of leaders in the plastics industry. You get a chance to speak to them. They're watching, they're listening. What's the encouragement that you can offer to the plastics industry of not just Save Our Seas 2.0, but a much broader sustainability, recycling, recovery, circularity discussion? What's the message that each of you would like to deliver to them if given the opportunity today?
I would say go for it. Follow your leaders. I'm a big fan of what Unilever in particular has done. I think the notion that they're willing to commit to extracting as much waste plastic out of the environment as they put into the environment, into the economy, first of all, it's an amazing pledge. But second, it creates a market. If you're committed as a big company to clean up your own mess, then that means that people who can deliver some of that to you, you'll pay them for that. And I think that step into there being a revenue proposition for people who are solving the ocean plastic problem is huge. So to the plastics industry, I'd say follow your leaders, and right now Unilever is the leader.
I would say, adding to that, continue to innovate and let us know what your ideas are. And we will continue. We're going to continue to work on this issue, but the innovation side, and then reaching out to the environmental groups to continue this alignment of interests, I think is really, really important. That's why we're going to keep the momentum going forward.
Very good.
Yeah, most of the plastic is in consumer products, and consumer products don't want to have a bad brand association with plastic waste. So I think there's a good, strong motivation in the industry to do this, and we have enjoyed working with them.
Very good. Well, Senators, we obviously appreciate your leadership on this issue. We're going to continue to support you in it. Look forward to working with you not just through the end of this session, but into next year. So thank you very much for your time. We know you got to get to a vote, so we appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it.